Well, to talk about the Manitoba vote, we're now joined by Niigaan Sinclair, columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press, and Steve Lambert, Canadian press reporter who's been covering this campaign from day one. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Listen, I want to begin with general impressions here. Do you see this election as a vote to bring a party in or a vote to kick a party out? Niigaan, I'll ask you to start us out.
I would say that it's probably to get rid of what has been a very lengthy term of austerity, which has resulted in record crime increases, big issues involving the pandemic and healthcare and long-term care facilities, and then generally the issue of what is probably the biggest talked about, certainly in the last 24 hours, the issue around searching the landfill for the remains of Indigenous women. It's the removal of the Conservative government is really on Manitoba voters' minds.
Okay, I'm going to get to that in a second, but Steve, I'll ask the same question, first question of you as well. Is this to get a party in or to get a party out?
Yeah, like a lot of elections, people, low voter turnout nowadays, people are less interested, and the way you get people out to the polls is to motivate people to get a government out. So like a lot of elections, this is an election about a government that has been in office 2 terms. There was anger over dating back to the pandemic. Before that, there was public service sector cuts, upset a lot of people. And this is an election where the anti-government vote overrides the sort of pro-vote for any of the other parties.
Mm-hmm. Which we're seeing in the polls, which I'll talk to you in a bit. But, Niigaan, I'll get back to you because you mentioned the search of the landfill site. And really, this past weekend, we saw the PCs run a full-page ad in the Winnipeg Free Press. Basically, it featured the party's stand against a search of the Prairie Green landfill. And that is, for those who've not been following, where the remains, sadly, of 2 missing Indigenous women are feared to have been left. How important has that issue, the landfill search, been in this campaign?
It probably didn't start out as being the number one issue, although certainly people did have it on their minds. It certainly created a lot of attention and, a long-term protest site. And the fact that Heather Stefanson asked for the feasibility study herself, Premier Heather Stefanson, and then upon the results coming back, just generally refused. I think what she saw at that time is a general feeling within Manitoba, and we've certainly did polling at the Free Press where we've found that there is an appetite in Manitoba to reject the idea of searching the landfill for these Indigenous women and girls, regardless of how gruesome that may be. And so the Conservatives have only recently, in the days in which the polls have come out to show widespread support, growing, surging amount for the NDP, the Conservatives have turned this into a very ugly campaign, particularly in the last week.
Particularly last week. Steve, what would you say to the landfill issue? How has that informed the way people are voting, even beyond the issue itself? Does it signal something to Manitoban voters about the choice they're about to make?
Well, as Niigaan pointed out, there was a Free Press CTV poll done by Probe Research that suggested that people are relatively evenly split on it. And it might not have been a major election issue. The way it came up was a bit surprising because it came up in the leaders' debate last week, and Heather Stefanson raised it, went on the offensive with it, which I think surprised everybody. It raised it as an issue to sort of go against Wald Canoe and the NDP in the debate. At the first opportunity she had to ask a question of another leader under that debate format, she raised the landfill issue and went after the NDP on it to clarify their stance and to explain why they would support a search given the feasibility study. Mm-hmm. So that was surprising. And then the ads came out in the newspaper, a full-page ad on a few issues, but that was a major one. And then a bunch of us got the same advertisement in our mail. They got a direct mailer in the last couple of days out to a lot of households in Manitoba on this issue.
Mm-hmm. And again, digging down on the issue, if you will. But, the polling numbers have been tipped to the NDP's favor. You both referenced the Probe Research one, and clearly it shows the NDP on the verge of having the vote of 1 out of every 2 voters, 50% of voters in the province. Talk to us, Niigaan, about how that has affected the PC campaign and what we're now seeing in the last days of this election campaign.
Well, the main problem with the vote for the NDP and the fact that they're surging is their vote is not efficient. It's mostly centralized around Winnipeg, perhaps one riding in Brandon, and a few rural ridings. But generally, it's overwhelming support, almost a 20-point lead in the city of Winnipeg for the NDP. And what that says is that it's going to be a tight election, and it's about who can get out the vote now. And the NDP ground game is starting to overtake the Conservative ground game, even in the rural areas. I was out in the rural areas this morning, and you see people around the clock, particularly those who are interested in removing the government, who are moving towards the NDP, even in fairly staunchly held Conservative ridings. So those ridings are becoming a bit tighter. But generally, the NDP is walking away with Winnipeg really over the issue of healthcare. The closing of ERs by the Conservative government has been widespread condemned, and people are really angry about that. And so the NDP has come out to say they will open up ER facilities that have been closed in the past, and that generally has been really that one tipping point issue.
Okay. Steve, what are you going to be watching out for? We have a few days left in this campaign before voting day next week. What are you actually watching out for in these last hours and days?
Well, I'm going to disagree with Niigaan a bit here. The NDP vote within Winnipeg, and 32 of the 57 seats in the legislature are in Winnipeg. The NDP vote in Winnipeg can be very efficient when the Liberal vote drops sharply. And polls suggest the polls suggest the Liberal vote has dropped in half from the last election. If those numbers hold, a lot of the seats that the Tories might win narrowly could go to the NDP. And it's a situation we saw in 2011 where the Liberal vote collapsed. The NDP got 46% of the popular vote province-wide. The Tories were not far behind at 43.5, but the seat count was 37 for the NDP and 19 for the Tories. So that if this scenario holds, if the poll numbers hold, there could be a larger than expected NDP majority given the efficiency of the vote in Winnipeg. What we'll be watching for in the next few days is what are the Liberals going to do to shore up their support, whether the Tories continue to play defense. We've been seeing them just highlighting held ridings, cabinet ministers who are fighting for re-election. They're not on offense. And the NDP is on offense. The NDP today went into St. Boniface, held a press conference. Wab Kinew spoke in French. St. Boniface is the French heart of Manitoba. And they're going after a seat held by Liberal leader Douglas Lamont. And they brought in Labor's doing a bit of a blitz there. The NDP are really targeting that one. And we've seen that in this election where the NDP goes into some of the South Winnipeg ridings that have traditionally been Tory. They're playing offense, the Tories are playing defense, and we're looking to see where those seats, where the battlegrounds are in the final days.
Well, we CPAC will be there for election night, so we'll be watching very closely. Listen, Niigaan, Steve, thank you for the insight. Really appreciate the time tonight.
You're welcome.
You got your thing.